Welcome back to the B Block or second section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts was the first state on the East Coast to legalize the adult use of cannabis by ballot question way back in 2016. Part of that original ballot question was the intent to create social consumption lounges. And 9 years later, the Cannabis Control Commission might be ready to make some rules and regulations to make that a reality in 2025. While the Commission has set up some guidelines for those new initiatives, it is still a long way from becoming reality. That regulatory board is trying to figure out the right combination of rules that will protect public safety while still providing the struggling industry an opportunity to expand to some new revenue opportunities. Now, this is a market that passed the $7 billion mark in sales last month since its inception in 2018. There have been over 50 closures, though, of dispensaries over the past few years, and yet there are still hundreds of applications in the licensing queue. One of the oldest, most well-known dispensaries and wholesalers in the state since its inception was Revolutionary Clinics. After an entire grow had to be destroyed because of contaminated soil, more than half of the staff had to be laid off 2 years ago. And now Rev Clinics is in receivership. At one point, they had 3 vibrant medical-only dispensaries with over 400 employees, and now their doors are closing. The beleaguered Cannabis Control Commission has named a new executive director for the second time in a month. The first candidate accepted and then changed their mind, and now former Holliston Town Manager Travis Ahern will take over. But now let's get back to our state correspondence and check in with Tina Tasaka, who covers Nevada and the tribal nations in the cannabis business.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. U.S. Representative Congresswoman Dina Titus, Democrat Nevada, has been named co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, a bipartisan group addressing marijuana issues that has been around for 8 years. She aims to push for federal recognition of the cannabis industry, which is legal in 24 states for recreational use and 38 for medical use, including Nevada. Key priorities include tax fairness, banking access for cannabis businesses, and addressing restrictions preventing Veterans Affairs from recommending marijuana for treatment. Titus also advocates for more research, urging universities to study cannabis without fear of losing federal funding. She seeks to reform marijuana's outdated classification as a dangerous drug. The 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians has expanded its cannabis operations with the opening of its 3rd Red Falcon tribal dispensary in Yucca Valley, California, highlighting ongoing growth in tribal cannabis enterprises nationwide. On December 7th, the new dispensary opened on sovereign reservation land along California's Route 62. This brings the total number of cannabis facilities to 3 for Red Falcon. There is an existing dispensary and consumption lounge at the Spotlight 29 casino location in Indio, which opened summer 2024, and I was there. The expansion comes as tribal participation in the cannabis industry continues to thrive. Approximately 85 tribes are currently involved in cannabis operations through regulation, cultivation, testing, processing, or retail nationwide, according to Mary Jane Oatman, founder and executive director of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
2 months ago, voters in Colorado Springs passed the adult use ballot question, but now advocates are getting restless because the city council there has not done anything to prepare or impose guidelines on next steps. 17 advocate groups, dispensary owners, and others have written a stern letter to their elected officials who have yet to prioritize the will of the people. With more from Colorado, here's Xavier Gillet.
Hi everyone, my name is Xavier Jaye, and I am the Colorado correspondent for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I also serve as a member of the board of directors and the director of the Colorado chapter of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a non-attorney professional at the McDonald Hopkins law firm, where I provide consulting and advising services to cannabis businesses looking to navigate the ever-changing regulations and challenges present in the cannabis industry. I've got a few stories for you all today. The first of which I want to start with a shout out to Colorado home brand Keef Cola. Keef has been making waves in 2024 with their line of THC infused beverages. They've been able to successfully grow revenue here in Colorado year over year, and have also experienced great success launching parallel product offerings containing hemp-derived THC. So this is a interesting example of product form growth and how beverages are quickly going to become a dominant product force in the cannabis industry, both because of their ease of access and kind of social effects, right? The ability to consume THC beverages similarly to the way one would consume alcohol. But also it's interesting to see Keef's growth over the years being attributable to lean business models, but also licensing partners. So Keef has really been able to structure its business in a way where it has capabilities to quickly move into new markets or to offer hemp-derived beverages to consumers in markets where marijuana, adult use marijuana or medical marijuana may not yet be available. So shout out to Keef Cola and the guys over there for their continued growth and success. I believe this is an indication of things to come in 2025, especially for the beverage category as a whole. Now, the second story is recent reports that local Colorado company Natty Rems, Natural Remedies, was able to secure a property improvement loan from Safe Harbor Financial, one of the leading cannabis-friendly credit unions or financial institutions here in the United States, based also here in Colorado. And that loan was effectuated and made possible by the Cannabis Resource Optimization Program, which is a government-run program here in Colorado that really seeks to allow cannabis businesses access to institutional funds for things like company growth, property improvement, and other kind of more standard traditional business needs that most non-cannabis businesses have no issue going out and securing capital for. So it's nice to see that shift in the wind for Natty Rems to where they were able to secure significant institutional investment tied to property improvement and making their operations generally more environmentally friendly and sustainable. And then finally, I just want to end on a brief recap of things that kind of changed or went into effect here on January 1st. The first of which is an increase in licensing and renewal fees for licenses issued and regulated by the Marijuana Enforcement Division, the MED here in Colorado, the main regulatory body. And second, a little bit more exciting, is the fact that quite a few new adult use jurisdictions have come online in Colorado. Surprising to many, not every city in Colorado allows its residents to access adult use cannabis within city limits. Of course, private consumption is still allowed, but places like Colorado Springs, the second largest urban center here in Colorado, just flipped to adult use. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that local particularized market develops, particularly in regards to Colorado Springs, because there is still some animosity and some tension from the ruling body there, the city council, regarding the use of adult use cannabis, or the offering of adult use cannabis, I should say, within city limits. So it'll be really interesting over the next few months to see how these jurisdictions that have newly embraced adult use cannabis sales within their city limits treat those, how many licenses they issue, where those licenses are allowed to be located, and ultimately how much revenue and taxes generated for these municipalities through the sale of adult use cannabis. So I'll be reporting back frequently over the year. For those that know me personally, I've had a busy few years finishing up law school, but I'm excited to contribute more frequently to this program, including interviews, product reviews, highlights of local events, and other things that should keep you appraised of everything that's happening in the Colorado cannabis industry. Thanks, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys next week.
The Congressional Cannabis Caucus is getting a fresh face for 2025. Representatives Dina Titus of Nevada and Ilhan Omar of Minnesota are stepping up as the new Democratic co-chairs, taking the reins from retiring reps Earl Blumenauer and Barbara Lee. While the old guard leaves big shoes to fill, Titus and Omar bring their own pro-legalization credentials to the table. Titus has been pushing for cannabis research funding and advocating for rescheduling, while Omar has been vocal about the need for federal legalization to address racial disparities in enforcement. On the Republican side, Reps Dave Joyce and Brian Mast are staying put as co-chairs. This bipartisan lineup sets the stage for a continued push on cannabis reform in Congress, with Titus calling for protection of the cannabis industry and Omar advocating for nationwide legalization and expungement. The caucus looks poised to keep the pressure on for federal cannabis policy changes. As we head into 2025, all eyes will be on this new leadership to see how they'll steer the ship of cannabis reform. Well, now let's check in north of the border in Canada with our Canadian correspondent, Debbie Facey.
This is Debbie Facey, your Canadian correspondent, with this week's Canadian Coast to Coast News Report. So what we have is Brock University, which is located in Guelph, Ontario, received an analytical testing license from Health Canada, allowing its VPMI team to analyze cannabis products for quality, safety, and strain typing. This initiative supports product development, identifies valuable compounds in the waste material, and benefits the cannabis industry across Niagara, Ontario, and Canada. Yes. Also, Health Canada has launched a cannabis data gathering program to analyze 50 legal and 50 illegal samples, with the findings to be published soon. This was a story that I did bring up, I want to say a couple of months ago, and I'm happy to know at least we are going forward. The initiative supported by the Cannabis Laboratory, so the Regulatory Operations and Enforcement Branch, is aiming to enhance the public understanding of cannabis health and safety risks while monitoring both legal and the illicit market. That is something that is not only as important for us to be able to narrow out, but to actually really see if our illicit market is as unaccountable as they are and have been trying to stay for the last how many years. So, once again, let's see what happens. This is Debbie with your Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. Peace.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast. Happy New Year and welcome to 2025, everyone. Here's what cannabis investors need to know as we move into the new year. While federal policy reform continues to grab headlines, the real action's happening at the state level. Several states are on the brink of major changes in cannabis policy, with Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Nebraska, and North Carolina leading the charge towards medical or adult use legalization. These states could be the next big game changers, so keep them on your radar. On the federal front, rescheduling remains a hot topic. The long-awaited reclassification of marijuana to Schedule 3, it appears likely under President-elect Trump's administration, signaling a potential shift in federal cannabis policy. And what about banking reform? The SAFE Banking Act, it remains stalled. But Trump does support banking reform, so maybe we could finally get this critical legislation signed into law, opening up big opportunities for the cannabis industry and growth in 2025. I see more mergers and acquisitions happening. With increasing competition and financial pressures, this could be the only way some of these big MSOs survive and expand? And another key question, will hemp products continue to thrive under the Farm Bill? If so, we may see MSOs pivoting to explore opportunities in the booming hemp market. And while there's so many unknowns, I believe the Trump administration could bring positive momentum for the cannabis industry in 2025. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast. I'm Doug Miller.
The cannabis landscape continues to evolve across the country, with each state charting its own course through legalization and regulation. Here are a few state updates. In Ohio, the Buckeye State, officially they joined the Adult Use Cannabis Club in 2024 as the 24th legal state. Industry analysts are predicting steady growth as the market finds its feet. Regulators are still fine-tuning the rulebook, especially when it comes to what's on the shelves, and are adding pre-rolls into the mix. Across Ohio's eastern border, the cannabis scene is heating up in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, but don't hold your breath for legalization just yet. Pennsylvania's lawmakers are still hashing out the details of an adult use framework. Social equity is a hot potato in these discussions, with legislators wrestling over how to bake fairness into the system. It's anyone's guess how this political tug of war will shake out. Once again, lots of talk from Pennsylvania, but no action. Further south, Kentucky's medical marijuana program is growing, with the state awarding 12 additional dispensary licenses this past week. This expansion signals progress in implementing a medical cannabis program, which was approved in 2023. Patients in the Bluegrass State are one step closer to being able to access the plant medicine, though the program's launch date remains to be determined. In New England, the Granite State of New Hampshire is cracking down on open cannabis containers in vehicles, even though adult use is still illegal. A new law puts cannabis on par with alcohol when it comes to cruising around. Drivers and passengers alike need to keep their stash sealed up tight and out of reach. That includes locking up your stash in the glove box or trunk, or behind the last upright seat in your ride. Well, get caught with an open container, you're looking at a $100 fine for your first offense. For repeat offenders, the price tag jumps to $250. Lawmakers say it's all about road safety, but some critics are raising eyebrows. Tim Egan of the New Hampshire Cannabis Association says, this new piece of legislation basically is a method for police to try and poke at folks that drive across the border to Maine, Massachusetts, or Vermont and buy their product. Some of our reporters are still wrapping up last year before they turn the page to 2025. New Jersey joined its New York neighbor to the north in the $1 billion sales market. So here's Jill Goldsberry with a recap of the Garden State's best year.
Hello and welcome to Coast Cannabis News, New Jersey. I'm Jill Goldsberry, your host. So much has happened in 2024 that we didn't even get to talk about during the holiday show. So don't worry. I'm here to catch you up on some of the biggest headlines, exciting first, and some of the hottest local hits from the past year in New Jersey. So let's get into it. Statewide, here are some of the wins that happened in 2024 in cannabis. First up, let's talk about some of the amazing milestones. At the end of 2024, New Jersey actually celebrated its biggest news story of the year, with recreational and medicinal sales hitting over $1 billion. That's actually a 25% increase from that time last year. So let's talk about growth, In other exciting news, New Jersey debuted an increase in the social equity tax, the SEAF tax, which is a mission-driven, which is a tax used to fund a mission-driven initiative for New Jersey, particularly to bring in funds that are going to help social equity wise in New Jersey, and to actually make some restitutions in underdeveloped and areas that were underfunded. and particularly affected by the war on drugs. So the tax has been raised from $1.24 per ounce to $2.50 an ounce, bringing in over the last quarter brought in over $1 million. And during the past few years, since 2022, this tax was able to bring in more than $6 million. So there's a lot of money that can be accumulated for this event. Excuse me. Mark your calendars, because this is the first week where New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission has opened the portal for applicants for cannabis consumption areas. You are now able to apply for your license, particularly for social equity and economically disadvantaged businesses, by April 2nd. Micro businesses and diverse owners can apply, but by July 2nd. So exciting times to be had here. Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of a, there have been some challenges for New Jersey. There's been a downside. New Jersey remains one of the most expensive states for recreational cannabis purchases, with 3.5 grams going for $60 before taxes, which is quite a stark difference, because in Colorado, one can purchase an ounce for as little as $40. So that's quite a change there. Now let's dive into some of the highlights and first locally. Locally, I want to give a shout out to Xena Lounge, which is set to be the very first Latino-owned consumption lounge in the Hudson County area, looking to open in Jersey City, I believe. And this will be a game changer for the local scene. And 2024 was also the year of women in cannabis. Okay, women dominated the New Jersey cannabis scene with 39 fully owned, women-owned, and operated cannabis businesses, and everything from dispensaries to edibles and anything in between. We saw our first female-owned brand launch a THC brownie to dispensaries, and a cannabis content creator house, and that was all launched by Butter Cake. So if you know, you know. If you were there, if you know, you know. Even brands, we have our very first female-owned and minority-owned pre-roll company, which is the company called Precious Cannabis. And we also have more than a few women-owned dispensaries that opened up over the last year. We're talking about the Joy Leaf Club, Joy Leaf, Nightjar, Holistic Solutions, and Valley Wellness, just to name a few. And to end the year on a high note, no pun intended, Cannademics hosted an upscale Bud Tenders Ball this year in North Bergen, New Jersey on December 30th. It was a celebration where industry leaders came together to honor some of the best bud tenders in the state. So talk about a great way to close out the year for 2024. And that was definitely one of the best. So that's it for now. I'm Jill Goldsberry, and this is your Coast to Coast Cannabis New Jersey news. Stay tuned for our next report. I'll see you then.
And finally, there is hope for many sufferers of IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. This very uncomfortable disorder affects an estimated 35 to 45 million people in the United States alone. And now Green Space Labs, out of Rhode Island, has received approval for a pivotal controlled study on using a cannabinoid-based medicine that can improve gastrointestinal symptoms that we all know are really uncomfortable. This is just another recognition of the medicinal applications of the cannabis plant, and the more studies and research that is done now, the sooner normalization and acceptance of this plant medicine will grow. That will do it for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Please consume responsibly. We'll see you next week.
In Willow Creek, Rory, renowned for birdwatching, embraced nature's elegance. Preparing for his woodland sojourn, he used grape-focused THC mist from Yellow Labs. Each spritz honed his senses, capturing avian beauty. Immersed in the forest symphony, Rory's lens froze vibrant moments. Emerging at twilight, gratitude filled him for the mist's clarity, recalling, "Find Yellow Labs near you." Rory ordered more of his mist.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
It's Debbie Facey with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.